We're here in Fort White to talk with George Walters. George, you were born in Chicago.
Yes.
How did you end up as a musician, educated in Miami?
Well, I was lucky enough to be born to parents who were both musical. My father was a professional pianist in Chicago, and while he was a big band pianist, traveling with the big bands, including Gene Krupa's band, he met my mother, and they got married, and I was born, and my brother, my younger brother. And we settled in Chicago, where he was a staff arranger and pianist at the Chez Paris nightclub in Chicago. And Brian Farnham's orchestra, nobody knows that name, but that's okay. It was not a flesh and feathers kind of place. It was a nightclub, and the likes of Frank Sinatra, Bobby Darin, Jimmy Durante, Paul Winchell, and Jerry Mahoney all performed there for a week. And it was my father's job as the staff arranger to arrange for a large band, 22 pieces or so, with French horns and everything, not just a jazz band, but he had to come up with a new arrangement for the opening of each week. And so in our third floor walk-up, we had a baby grand piano, and I would hear my father playing and writing in longhand the arrangements for each week as they came about. It was a wonderful experience. I got to hear him, and of course my mother played, not professionally, but I got a chance to hear her as well. The music business changed, as it always evolves, and the opportunities were in Miami. So my father came down, immediately joined the Miami Union, and was guided towards the Fontainebleau Hotel, which was looking for a pianist. And he played in the showroom there, with us still in Chicago. And he took the opportunity then to fly back and pack up the family. He bought up a place in Miami and took the whole family down to Miami, and he did his entire career, the rest of his career. I was 8 years old, so you can get the idea. His entire career down in Miami, writing arrangements, playing for acts, mostly at the Fontainebleau Hotel and the Diplomat Hotel in Miami.
Wow.
And I went to Miami schools starting in 3rd grade.
So you're a product of the public school system then.
I am a product of the public school system and proud of it.
Well, you started on piano. How did you find trumpet?
Well, my dad took me to the same music conservatory that he went to, Sherwood Music Conservatory in Chicago. My uncle was in one of the bands that my father was the pianist of, and he played trumpet. And we reconnected in Miami, and my uncle would play the trumpet, and I heard it, and it was fine, and I was in elementary school. Well, the junior high band, junior high then, came over to the elementary in a recruiting tour, and I was there at the concert, and I was just blown away with the sound. I loved the sound of the concert band, the full, rich, deep tones that even then the junior high was performing, and I was hooked. I had to be in the band, so my uncle loans me a trumpet. I start fiddling around with it in 6th grade. By the time I got to 7th grade, which was the beginning in those days, I skipped beginning band, because I already knew how to read music from the piano. I skipped beginning band, went right into the intermediate band, and that was 7th grade. In 9th grade, my band director fell, and he hurt himself, and he couldn't teach, couldn't come into the band, couldn't come into school. Well, we're talking about 1960, 61, somewhere in that area. There were no music subs in those days, and the band had a big performance coming up. And again, things were more flexible then. They pulled me out for 2 weeks, and I taught all his classes as a student. And you want to talk about being hooked on teaching? That's where it happened. I mean, between that, the sound of the band, And the fact that I got to learn how to do that, even though I was just in 9th grade, I spent 2 weeks all day in the band room. And they had a sub there to take care of the paperwork and be legal, but I did it all. And I'll never forget that, ever. And I was hooked. So I had to become a band director. I knew I wanted to be a band director in 7th grade.
Well, you certainly fulfilled your wishes. So now you're in 7th grade. What about high school and college?
Well, let's see, high school, the band wasn't quite as good in high school as it was actually in the junior high. For whatever reasons. It doesn't really matter. Not because of a poor band director, but circumstances. The band room was a portable, and the sound was harsh and horrid. Even then, I remember that. But the band director was working hard and trying hard, and he knew what I liked and what I wanted to do. And so he again guided me, got me into the jazz band, got me into chorus, so I could work on singing and those skills, and of course the concert band. So that when I left high school, I went to Miami-Dade, then community college. And I had some wonderful teachers there. My trumpet teacher was John Giorgini, wonderful trumpet player. I believe he's still playing. And he guided me, and he also knew my father because of the arrangements and everything. He knew my father, and they guided me through Miami-Dade. And then I auditioned for the University of Miami, and I got a 50% scholarship. But after 4 years, music was a 5-year program unless you went all summer. So I did 4 years and I had to drop out. One of my, I finished the 4th year. I didn't quit. But I didn't have enough money to do the 5th year, even with the scholarship and everything else. So I went to work for Publix. Publix Markets, and they put me in management training right away. But I wasn't satisfied. I was singing along with Muzak. And, that's a scary thought. So, one day I'm driving down Tamiami Trail, and I see a whole bunch of trailers. And I go into one of the trailers, and there is one of my professors from the University of Miami, who was helping found Dr. Bob Test. I want to give him credit. He's passed. But he grabbed me by the arm. Again, I'll never forget. He grabbed me by the arm and says, "You're going to finish." And he took me over, walked me into the registration area, and I signed. I said, I want to do that. So I only had 1 semester of classes to take, and then the internship. That's all I had. Mm-hmm. And I owe him that. He just took me by the hand and says, "You're going to finish." So I did.
Where did you do your internship?
Oh, I interned at in a split internship. Was how they were doing it, similar to the University of Miami, where you do 6 or 8 weeks, depends on the year, it was different, with elementary level, and then 6 or 8 weeks in the secondary level. The wonderful experience, I had wonderful experience, and Dr. Howard Doolin, the music supervisor in Miami at the time, knew he got the opportunity to push his agenda, and his agenda was a music specialist, certified degreed music specialist in every school. That was his. So the year I graduated, I had the opportunity of 3 or 4 schools, and I was able to go back to one of the schools that I had interned at. That job was open, and I went to Everglades Elementary School, where I really learned to teach. And I was teaching music. I was itinerant. I was room to room to room. But I learned how to organize, and I learned how to teach and send equipment to the next room ahead of time, those kinds of things.
All those logistical things.
Yeah, we call it administravia. You have to learn how to survive. And I did that for 9 years.
So that was at Everglades Elementary.
Yes.
And how did you get from Everglades Elementary to 34 years later, your retirement? What covered that span?
Well, that same music supervisor, Dr. Howard Doolin, came to me and he said, we have a high school band. There's a jump for you. A high school band that's had 5 band directors in 6 years.
Oh.
And it could have been 4 and 5, but they kept changing band directors. It was out of control. The band parents were running the band, and this was Hialeah Miami Lakes Senior High. I can say that because when I took the job, and I was scared to death. I was scared to death. But when I took the job, the band parents were immediately cooperative. I never had a bad day with them. The apparently had rid themselves of some of the cancer of the previous. Plus, I'd like to think that my approach with the students was welcomed. I'd like to think that, and I think it was. And I was only going to do 1 year, and I stayed for 2. They were trying to get me to stay long term, but I didn't. I had the opportunity to go to the feeder school for Hialeah Miami Lakes Senior High, which was Hialeah Middle School. And the reason I wanted to go there was because the band was huge. The beginning bands were full. I taught beginning bands of 90.
Wow.
And I had, again, Dr. DiCarbo from the University of Miami saying to me, you know, that's a job you should take. You really will learn a lot. And I'll send you interns to help you. And we did.
And that's a great way to help a high school, too, is to provide a quality feeder into the high school program. And
absolutely.
That can do a lot of good. So what happened next? You're still teaching, and where did you go next?
Well, I was driving a long ways to that school because I lived in Kendall, which is South Dade County, and Hialeah was north. And a band parent apparently had followed me a little bit in my career, and had also had a situation at Glades Middle School where they had a band director come in for 2 years, get married, get pregnant, get divorced, and quit in 2 years. She went to the principal and says, I know this gentleman. He might be willing because of the drive. She, I should say, said, well, you know, we're not allowed to call somebody up and just offer him a job. It's like tampering. Mm-hmm. So what she did was, the principal said, well, okay, I'll speak to him. So she had her secretary call me and said, our principal would like to have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, okay. And I did go down there, and as I recall, they traded me down to Glades Middle School for filing cabinets. For new filing cabinets. She had to order filing cabinets and send them up to Hialeah, and then they would sign my reassignment sheets or whatever. That's a true story.
Okay, and is there any job between Glades and when you went to Robert Morgan? No,
I didn't move very much. 4 schools, I think, in the 34 years. While I was at Glades, it was interesting, if I could digress a bit. I heard these little rumors because Hialeah Middle School was a junior high. It was the last junior high in Dade County. Because Hialeah Senior High, the main feeder that I fed, didn't have room to build a 9th grade. So we had 7, 8, 9, even though it was called Hialeah Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went to the Glades Middle. It was a true middle school. And I heard this from other band directors. Oh, he'll never be able to play that literature he was playing there. And we'll find out if he can really teach, you know, and that kind of stuff. I guess I can say politely and respectfully, we did play the literature. We played always grade 3s and grade 4s in the true Glades Middle School. We played all 4 of the Grumman Rhapsodies. We played to Kelly's Amazing Grace, Shenandoah. We played all of those out of a true middle school. And I'm proud of that, not because of me. I'm proud of that because the kids bought into the sound. We would always have music playing when they came in the band room. Sometimes it was even jazz. Sometimes it was good pop. But there was something playing as they came in. We're setting a musical tone. A lot of people talk about doing that, but I was really doing it. And it set a whole tone for the whole rehearsal. That to come in and they would hear. And of course, as we're working on our evaluations for the MPAs, the music that we were going to play was playing as they come in the doors. One of the counselors at Glades was tapped to become the head counselor at Robert Morgan when they expanded from a VOTEC school to a full-service high school with academies, engineering, culinary arts, and I was tapped because of his influence. I was tapped to be the performing arts chair, department head, and band director. And I worked at the school for a year before I went there, both jobs, the middle school, and then at night I'd order the instruments and order the music and those kinds of things. And that's how I got to Robert Morgan. And I opened the program and was there for 4 years till retirement.
And you retired after 34 successful years.
You're kind to say that, but I feel like they were pretty good.
Well, while you were at Hialeah Middle School, there was really a beautiful story about a young lady named Dora. Would you tell that, please?
Well, we're in an art form as band directors and students that really trades on your emotions. If you don't have emotion in your music, you just have a computer. And we have wonderful computers today. They'll play, but they don't style. Well, I tried to express that to all of my students. Hialeah had a very large special ed center, occupational therapy. Students were there until they were 21. And they were mainstreamed into the band room by the counselors, and if they were appropriate. Obviously there are some who just could not, but we had a lot of them. And one particular girl named Dora came in and was totally deaf, totally deaf. Her mother worked in a laundry, so they were poor and couldn't afford an instrument, so of course we waived the fee and we got her an instrument. And we've discovered, and I'm sure I had help discovering this, but we discovered that she could hear the flute because of bone conduction here, through the teeth and through the bones. She could actually hear it. She couldn't hear the rest of the students to balance, but she was never going to hurt us. So we took her in, not only into the beginning situation, but worked her way up to become a top band, so we called it symphonic band then, student. And we took her to evaluations, and everywhere we went we took her. And somewhere, maybe my idea, but I think it was probably a student idea, all the students took up a collection, and we bought her a flute. And the flute case, we put a plate on it and it said Dora. I don't remember her last name, bless her heart. And she cried. When we presented that flute to her, she just cried and cried and cried. And her mother thanked us. And it's an experience that, I wanted to teach those kinds of values to the kids and hopefully get them to express themselves through their music that way. It was successful with her.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Your career was a great success, and you credit a lot of people for that. Could you talk about some of those people who have made a difference?
Well, I would like to credit my wife first.
A wise man.
And she's not even here in the room. I couldn't have done any of this without her holding down the fort at home. We have one son, and I did my master's, and I played 6 nights a week mostly on Miami Beach. I was able to do all of this because of the stability at home. And I want to make sure that that's important and is said. You don't have to always, it's not always a wife or a spouse, but you need someone supportive in your situation. Because band directors are unique people and their demands are everywhere. As far as teaching goes, Bob Testo, as I mentioned earlier, grabbed me and said, "You're going to finish." Dr. Michael Wagner came and worked in the music department, music education department, and he had me reading several books, one by Clifford Madsen from FSU, who I believe is still there, on teaching and discipline, and he introduced me to him. And he's the one who, while I was a second-year teacher, went downtown and got a waiver so I could start having interns in my second year. You were supposed to be on a continuing contract first, and it was a year early. And over the time, I had 40 of them.
40 interns?
At least 40.
Wow.
We only count 40. As far as professors go, Dr. Nicholas DiCarbo also took me under his wing from the university. He became his associate dean. He would come and just be the most encouraging person. I was able to play under, in college, I was able to play under some wonderful people, Dr. Fred Fennell, Mr. Fred McCall. John Kenyon was my music instrumental tech teacher. You do better than that. There's some wonderful, wonderful people who guided me in those areas. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. I'm sure, but those are the ones that jump here.
Mm-hmm. What words of wisdom or advice do you have to young directors?
Well, one big one is to stop, if you're doing this, if you're doing it, stop being afraid for other people to hear your band in the formative stages, especially I'm talking young directors. Open the band room, bring in people, let them tell you. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard, "Well, let me get the band more ready. When they're more ready, I'll call you." We who are trying to do it in a professional way, but friendly professional way, are trying to help you solve your problems, if there are any, or just let you step away from the podium, leave the music behind, and just listen. Hear what you really hear. If you're doing this and reading the score, you're hearing things that may not be happening. I have another story, sorry. There's a wonderful musician in Miami. This person who plays the stuffing out of their instrument. Beautiful musician. But when they're in front of the band, they're hearing something else. Harsh tones, not well produced. They're hearing what they think they hear on the page. They're not hearing what's actually being produced by the students. There was a quote, I'm looking at this paper, there's a quote I stole from somebody. This is from a student of mine. I don't remember her name, but she says, "We are judged by how we sound, not by how we think we sound."
Ooh.
And I wrote it down. I have a little paper that I give out when I'm lucky enough to do an honor band, and it has all these truisms, and I say right on the paper, I stole these from all the different band rooms. These are not mine, but imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But that student said that to me. We had it on one of our shirts one year, band shirts. So. Open the band room. Let people come in, and you step back and be unencumbered by anything.
You're a very kind person.
Thank you.
What is it about your nature that has helped you have musical success?
Well, that's a hard one. I would just like to think that the kindness that I try to express. And I know we all have bad days and we all have harsh days, but the kindness I try to express is the expression that I want them to bring out in their music. We talked about several times about Shenandoah and how it ends with a tapered phrase that ends in the clarinet and goes to nothing, end to nothing. And to get a middle school band to understand that concept takes this, it takes style. Childhood Hymn, which is played to death, but has some wonderful moments in it. And one adjudicator was in the middle of a concert, and he was crying. I don't know if I should mention his name or not, but he's a good colleague, Jim Hacker. I'll say his name. He's a wonderful retired band director. He was sobbing, and we had another song to go. I think that part of my nature is what I tried to transfer to the students. Kindness, life skills, politeness, citizenship skills. They all, it's like this. It's not this, it's this. I recall one band director, I went into this person's band room, and I don't remember who it was, and they said, well, today we're going to work on theory, and tomorrow we're going to work on nomenclature. The next day we're going to work on dynamics. And I said to this person, that's not the best approach. That's the way I say it, the best approach. We need to work on all things at all times within the limits. And then you begin to get it. And we have to be consistent. What's good on Monday can't be different on Thursday. It has to be the same every day. Especially, I think, in middle school, where structure, they'll tell you they don't want to be told what to do. Oh, I don't want to. They do. They do. But they want to be, they want you to do the same thing every day, and they want you not to browbeat them. I said no gum in the band room, so go spit out your gum. It's good enough. Then why are you spitting? Why are you chewing gum? That's an unfair question. Madsen, that's an unfair question. You don't care why. Get rid of the gum, solve the problem, let's go on with our rehearsal.
Do you have any regrets?
As far as me personally, the only one, and it doesn't eat at me, but the only one is I wish I had listen to me, I wish I had gone on and done my doctorate. I would like to have had the experience of teaching more in a college setting. I was fortunate to teach 9 years of adjunct at the University of Miami. I taught jazz and pop for non-jazz pop majors because the Florida degree says you can teach anything. Music K through 12. And if you're a pianist from Sweden, and the university has lots of foreign students, they don't know who Earth, Wind, and Fire is. They don't know who Miles Davis is. So that class that I got to teach every semester was to indoctrinate them in that literature and that style, so that if they got a job teaching in Florida, they at least have something to fall back on, a nice notebook and literature to research and decide. And hopefully they could swing a little bit, And that would be, the only regret is that I couldn't do that on a more long-term basis.
You talked about making sure that the students had ownership in the program. Could you expand on that a bit?
Well, it's not my band. I conducted an honor band in Broward County when they were going to do some massive cuts. So the then music supervisor in Broward County asked me if I would come out and pretend to conduct when there were no students on the stage, and then turn around in a little frustration to the audience and leave. But obviously the message was, without the students, we have no band, we have no music, we have no sound. It's their band. And I tried. I'm not always, who's successful 100%, I don't know. But I tried to instill the fact that it was their band. And we were here. I said, you can't do it without me. But I can't do it without you. And we have to do it together. And if we don't do it together, we will not be successful. And that's what I tried to do. More like a family. They're talking about it today with the NFL. Certain teams are trying to be good family atmosphere. The Florida Marlins, or the Miami Marlins now, are a good example of that. One of their players was hit just the other day in the face by a 92-mile-an-hour fastball. Then the team rallied around them. The support was there, and they talk about family. Well, that's what I was trying to do too. Family. I mentioned to someone that when I started my career in Hialeah, it was highly Hispanic, and the girls would come up and give me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. And of course, that was all very benign, but we had to do, that was the culture. Nowadays, you can't do that. I remember pushing on brass players' stomachs in beginning band to get them to push the air, to get a good sound, good representative sound. Well, then I progressed to putting a book on their stomach, and I only touched the book. And finally, I give up. That's just the way our society has changed. But that feeling is the feeling I tried to instill in the kids. And I think we were successful because I had, if none, very few instruments ever missing. Music was not desecrated. We got it all back. When I did retire, the instruments were all there for the next director. Kids can steal. Kids can do things. I went to one concert. I'll never forget this. The band director turned her back, and instruments were flying across the stage. Good band director. Good band director. As soon as they turned around, everything was fine. They won't stop because you're going to yell at them. They'll stop because it isn't right. You see what it isn't right. It isn't what we do. That was my philosophy. I was trying to do that.
Trying to get them to be good citizens.
Absolutely.
When you were teaching, what did you do to keep your edge, to keep from getting burned out?
Well, it wasn't a big problem. I was playing professionally on Miami Beach all the time in both my own band, and then as I scaled back a little, I went to 3 nights a week instead of 6, and I had a substitute, a wonderful substitute, so it was a steady sub. And I played in Miami's top brass, a brass quintet, for 7 or 8 years. So I was playing professionally. The Florida Bandmasters Association really helped me keep my edge because working as district chair, I saw all the ins and outs and all the problems, and I got to hear a lot of bands. I was elected middle school representative, did that for the 2-year term, I believe. So I got to go to the board meetings, again, hear wonderful bands, meet wonderful people. And both Miami-Dade County and the Florida Bandmasters Association would tap me to be the coordinators for certain bands. And those jobs, while maybe seem tedious to someone, I found them to be wonderful. I met Bob Sheldon when Bob Sheldon was still the Marching Chiefs director, I believe, at FSU. And he was conducting an honor band. And I met Mallory Thompson and spent the week watching her conduct and rehearse. And, oh dear, I can't even think. Dr. DeCarbo did one. Dr. Julian White from Florida A&M University was in Miami twice, and I was his coordinator. So between the Florida Bandmasters and the Miami-Dade schools, I was always here, or surrounding myself with wonderful quality people. And I always wanted to be like them.
Well, now you are retired. What do you do outside of band?
Well,
I know you're still an active adjudicator.
Yes, I try to do that, and I'm hoping to do another honor band or 2, I hope. I have some literature I really would like to try. And it does relate to band. Back all the way back to Hialeah, I had a little camper, and I brought it to the parking lot of the school because my wife and I were going to go camping for the weekend. And this little girl comes up to me, and I'll never forget. She comes up. She says, "My mom and dad are in camping. You'd like to do camp with them sometime." And we did, and I had a great time. And this was in the 80s, and we've been doing it ever since. So one of my releases is RVing. Started in a camper, and now we have a motorhome. And we go to rallies, and enjoy the fellowship of fellow campers. It has pretty much nothing to do with music. I bowl twice a week with my wife. We bowl at Lake City Bowl. So we have that. We have RVing, bowling, and I do have to relate it to music. I was just elected to the Lake City Community Concert Association, where we book acts for a venue at Gateway College, 5 a year, and we pick the acts that we want to hire for the next year. It isn't directly. I'm not conducting, and I'm only one of several members, but it's fun and it's fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've run a bit over our half hour. However,
I'm sorry.
No. It's been wonderful. You had some stories about concerts or programs that were interrupted for various things, and I think the directors would like to hear about those.
Well, I hope they're true stories. They're not made up or exaggerated, to the best of my knowledge. One of the fears I have is that young band directors, will let extraneous things get to them. And those are sometimes things that we just can't control at all. One was when I was at Glades Middle School, and we were playing Amazing Grace, Tecali's Amazing Grace, and during the beautiful soft section, the fire alarm went off. Now this was an MPA. This wasn't just your run-of-the-mill B-flat concert. We're playing for the judges and saying, like we do, tell me what I can do better. We were playing, and the fire alarm goes off, and I can tell you with right hand to God, not a student put their instrument down. They just kept right on going. And I was so proud of them that they just kept right on going. And it was a very successful performance.
And you had another story where you were adjudicating.
Oh, yes. I'm so sorry I can't remember the panel or the school. I think it was in St. Augustine, however, now that I recall. And it was a Saturday, and we were in the balcony as adjudicators and watching the band and listening, of course. And all of a sudden, the stage starts to look like it's moving. It's trembling. And the students are getting a little fidgety, but they didn't stop. They finished the march. I believe it was the march. And the next thing you know, they're exiting the stage, and we can see that it's termites swarming. Absolutely true. Termites swarming. And it was a wooden stage, obviously. They had to come in and spray. We took a lunch break, a long lunch break. Then the band came back as if nothing had happened and played their final 2 selections. They could have fallen apart. They could have let it all bother them. But this is what bands do for kids. And they performed, and they finished, and took pride in their performance. They said, we did it despite the odds.
Well, we're very proud of you for being a legacy member.
Oh, my goodness.
And this has been a delightful visit. But now it's time to say bye-bye.
Goodbye. And thank you for watching this